Hi folks, madurobob here in the shop. I just cranked out a bunch of these nut blanks. I figured it'd be a good idea to show how quickly these nut blanks can be made into a nut, so I'm going to do that right here. But just real quick, you can see we've got some ivory ones, we've got some dark ones. Ivory ones look, well, they look a whole lot like ivory or bone. Dark ones, it's probably hard to tell on the camera. It's little tiny speckles in it, a little bit of gray. I'm going to be picking up several different colors from my friend the Corian fabricator. I'm going to work with the dark ones because the dark ones show up the scratches from sanding a little bit easier, so hopefully you'll be able to see what it looks like in process. If I get up close, that's the finished edge. Here's where I've been cutting. You can see some cut marks here, maybe even some burn marks from the saw blade, and on the ends as well. So I'm going to run through how I make a nut really quickly. You can see some of the tools I have. I have a little vise. That's just to hold the stock for me when I need to make some adjustments for it when I'm doing the carving. Got a random orbital sander here that's got a 220 grit on it just for doing some final sanding. I got the shaper here, belt sander, 60 grit. It's a little bit glossed over because I've been grinding some glass with it. It's a little bit rough, but it should work here. So I'm going to turn this thing on here and make a nut really quick. So I don't know what the camera's microphone is going to do. You may want to turn down the volume on your device. So here we go. I'm going to turn it on. You'll notice there's a little bevel here in this belt sander where I'm going to run the stock up against it, and I'm going to use that to make the bevel of my nut. Quick and easy. So that should just about do it. It's not perfect. You can see towards the end I was rounding over the edges just a little bit. I'll probably hit that just a little bit more. It's a little bit thick on top. I want that to be not quite a knife's edge, but a little bit finer than that. So I'm going to give it hit it one more time. Yeah, that's what I want to see. So you can see it's a little bit rough. Nice thing about Corian though is it cleans up really nice. That's 60 grit on the belt sander. I'm going to jump right up to 220 with the palm sander and clean that up. So here it is going to get a little bit loud again. That's it, looking pretty good. We can hit it again with like a 400 grit, a wet dry, and really get it polished up nicely, but this is just a quick hit just to show how it's done. So I've got basically a shaped nut blank there. It might be a little bit thick. For the record, these guys are 1.5 inches wide because most of us use 1.5 inches stock for our necks and our fretboards. Just shy of a 1/2 inch tall, 12 millimeters. This obviously was 12 millimeter stock I got from the shop. And 5/16 thick. It's perhaps a tiny bit thick for a nut, but it's really easy to shave down with a belt sander or even just with generic sandpaper or a file. The next batch I make may be just a tiny bit thinner, but you can see, get a cross section there, see what it looks like. Now I've got to turn this, slot it for a nut, so that's where the vise comes in. I'll open up the vise, pop this guy in the vise. There we go, got it in the vise. Whip out my handy dandy ruler. I put my slots about 15 millimeters apart. 1.5 inches is handy, it's just about 40 millimeters. So I start at 5, go to 15, 25, 35. I'm more or less marked for where my slots are going to go. Bring up my little tool here. You adjust the camera a little bit so we can see that. Focus camera. Alright, now I take my handy dandy StewMac files here, and I know what string gauges I use pretty much all the time, so I can just carve these right away. Quite tight enough in the vise. Where's my 26? There's 26. I always like to give them a little down the back of the slope there too. I'll have a look at it up close. I could probably drop those slots in a little bit farther, especially on that 36 right there. Just getting it a little bit better. Now we're getting close. Looking like a nut, sounding like a nut, feeling like a nut. I'll give it another quick hit with the sander. And there we have a nut ready to go, ready to put onto a fretboard. Again, 12 millimeters tall, probably a little bit tall if you're using a 1/4 inch fretboard. Nice thing about this is it's really easy to bring it down a little bit to adjust your action. Use the vise again, but flip it over and put it in upside down. Leave a little bit sticking up. Now I was at a festival this weekend adjusting action on guitars that had these nuts on them, just using a regular bastard file. I'd have estimate how much I needed to shave off of it, put it in the vise like this, and use the file and file them back and forth. But here in the shop, it's a whole lot easier. Looks like the camera's not focusing. Focus, camera. It's a whole lot easier to hit it with belt sander. So belt sander makes easy work of this. Here we go, power tools again. You see, I just sand it down so it's level with the top of the vise, which is flat and square. And now I've made my nut just a little bit shorter so it would fit with a smaller fretboard. So it's simply a matter of holding it up next to your fretboard and see how much you need to adjust it to get it to fit. Now I use these blanks also not just for the nuts but for the bridges as well. You can see my bridges. Here's a typical bridge blank. It's just a simple piece of wood. Cut a couple of 45s on it. Cut a dado out down the middle. So the blank will fit in there just like that. Now I've got pretty much got a bridge ready to go. Usually I'll cut out a bit of the wood underneath so it's just sitting on two legs. And now I can adjust my action by either sanding down the two legs that are sitting down there where they contact the box, or doing just what we showed with the belt sander and the vise and bringing this blank a little bit shorter as far as we need to. And you see how I beveled the nut on one side to do the saddle. I'll bevel it on two sides, so I can do that real quick here too. Again, belt sander, gonna be loud. So quick and dirty, we file it to a point on both sides, and now you've got a pretty good bridge that you can use to use your files, use whatever you use to cut your slots, and you have a good bridge ready to go. And you can, of course, round over the corners, dress it up however much you feel like you need to do. So that's it. Nuts and bridges from Corian. Dead simple.